Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Business, and I am doing the overview of the Tier 5 Japanese cruiser, the Furutaka. And I'm not sure if I've mentioned this in any of the other videos, but you see that the whole deck area, doesn't it look like a basketball court or like a clay tennis court? I always thought that was funny back in closed beta, and I mean, it's a bit less pronounced now because I use so many different skins and whatnot, which, by the way, this is a skin by Tans. And of course, I'll always leave the description in the link in the description. Sorry. Hope you guys are having fun with the April Fool's Day event, even though it's like a 2-week event. So that's pretty cool. You get to farm a shitload of flags and actually a fair amount of money too for no cost other than your time. So as far as the Furutaka is concerned, a lot of people consider this free XP bait, and I wouldn't disagree with them initially. Because when you first get the Furutaka, or if you're buying it back and trying to look at things again and just see how it plays differently for you, the stock form is garbage. Just absolutely awful. I mean, 2.7 rounds a minute, 31.6 second turret traverse, and by the way, that's with expert marksman, so it's really like, what, 36 seconds, I think? Yeah, it's really bad. And you have an 11.8 kilometer range. Your torps are only 6 kilometers, and you know, I mean, these all get upgraded, so that's the best part. The AA defense is absolutely breathtakingly bad, and you know, that's certainly, I would almost say that this is kind of like a precursor. Like, don't get used to having AA defense. You know, you're not going to have it with the Japanese line at all. Like, that's just not what their strength is at any point in the game. And yeah, so this is where it really begins. But the B hull and C hull improve the maneuverability, so you go down to 6.6 seconds and then 5.7 seconds, and that's a pretty noticeable change. You still have a large turning radius though, so you have to bear that in mind. When you're engaging an enemy, you're going to have a large turn, and that'll keep you exposed for longer. You do get the chance to upgrade your range to 13 kilometers, which is still really bad. And you know, almost nobody's going to be running the B hull of the Omaha anymore, so you're going to be outranged a fair bit by that, the Murmansk, and certainly the Kirov, which I'll go into here in a moment. But the torpedo upgrade is definitely helpful. It boosts the range up to 10 kilometers and damage a little bit more, so these are really powerful torps. Actually, I'm pretty sure they're the most powerful that you can get at this tier, and they hit like a ton of damn bricks. So there is the turret upgrade, which increases the rate of fire up to 4 a minute, so you have a 15-second reload, and you do get some other benefits with that as well. But generally, you know, all around, it's, on paper, it's not impressive. And I think wargaming kind of has a tendency to be too cautious about higher caliber guns on cruisers. So if you, like, to me, this ship lacks a lot of penetration value, and you know, for 203mm guns, I think it's missing something, for me at least. And whether it's accuracy or the penetration, if I had accuracy, I could deal with that, like having, you know, less shell penetration. But when it comes to the way that the ship behaves in combat, it's a bit interesting. So I'll get to that again in a second. No need to run the AA gun mod 2, just go with the accuracy mod and the propulsion mod as well. I do run last stand on this because if I get into a fight, and that's an actually legitimate issue, is because the range is so crap on this, you need to be able to get out of the situation as well. And that's the interesting thing about this, is that because of the limitation on range, you actually have a very serious issue of immediately, like, once you start engaging an enemy, you're already overextended because of the fact that you're certainly within range of, you know, their shells before they're in range of yours. So, like, if you're facing a Kirov, I mean, that has a 16.5 kilometer range. I mean, you have 3.5 kilometers to try to make up there, and by that time, you know, that's only when your guns are just starting to become effective. while he's been able to hit you the whole time, you know? So I do find that the Furutaka does not do very well against destroyers. The HE, when it actually hits, almost always does very well, but there's an odd bit of dispersion that happens with this ship, and it doesn't feel as accurate as it should be to me. You know, it's just weird when you look at something like the Zao at tier 10 and how you could put all 12 of the shells within like the conning tower of a Matsuki or something, but when you do that with a Furutaka, it's over the whole length of the boat, so it just kind of throws me off a bit. The shell speed as well takes a little bit for me to get used to. I'm not entirely sure why, but I've always had problems leading with this, and you can see here I'm doing a bad job. One, leading against the Bogue, and then two, I should not be using AP. The Bogue is a very thin-skinned target. You really should be using HE against it, because you'll get citadels much more frequently with HE than you will with AP against that, because it's just that thin, and you know, you're more likely to overpen. Now the Cleveland here, I did manage a couple citadels against him, and this goes to show you, actually, this is a really good example of how you play the Furutaka. Not the angling, which I'm doing a good job of here as I bounce those shells, but the fire support. Never engage an enemy, especially if it's something like a Cleveland, if you don't have people backing you up. It's just a ship that really requires support, and is also actually really good at supporting other ships like that. So think of it more like, in my opinion, something like a battleship escort, where, you know, you have the hydroacoustics, you have solid HE shells, and, you know, you're kind of just in and out of the battle in the background, while, you know, the bigger targets, they duke it out and that sort of thing. So to me, that's one of the best roles for this ship. And the torpedoes, you'll see a fair amount of usage of these throughout the course of the video. I did hit the New Mexico there with the first set of torps, and finished off the Fuso with the guns right when he was hit by other torps from my team, so that was good. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about these torps as the video goes on. But this was one of the better matches I actually had in the Furutaka, and I believe this was the first one since I bought it back. And let me see real quick. This video is, oh yeah, from January 27th. It's kind of a long time ago. And of course, that's a fair bit of time, and, you know, a lot has been added to the game since then, and you have to reconsider where certain ships stand in regards to, say, the new Russian cruiser line. You know, you have to kind of reevaluate things, and when looking at tier 5 cruisers, you have a pretty interesting mix of ships: the Königsberg, the Furutaka, the Kirov, the Murmansk, and the Omaha. And the Furutaka is not quite like any of those. You know, it's quick, it has some speed, it's very low slung, and that's one of the big advantages of it, because the Königsberg, as you can see over there, has a large amount of that ship like sticking up out of the water. The Kirov is huge. It might as well be a Walmart on the ocean. I mean, it's a massive side. But and of course the Murmansk, Omaha, you know, they're very easy to damage as well if you get on their side. All of these ships can actually do pretty well if you're angled against the shots, but you know, once you get to the side, it's a different story, and that's where the Furutaka actually has a little bit of an advantage, because it is low slung and kind of harder to hit in that respect. But still, you don't want the ship to get on your side and load AP. It's always a recipe for disaster. And I actually ended up hitting a Phoenix there. You could see him hugging the island. Where is that? Like right on the 3 line there. And I'm engaging this Colorado right after Kami sets off his torps, and have my AP loaded, manage a double strike, yay! It took me a couple times to look at the screenshots as far as like who I killed and the replay to figure out what the hell actually happened there, but that was really unexpected. One of the other things I've had issues with as far as using this ship is getting the right lead. yeah, as you can tell, I didn't get the right lead there, really. I mean, sure, I did some damage to cause the fire. But, I mean, carriers are really hard to figure out anyways, because you're not usually shooting them. I mean, the Cleveland is the most played ship in the NA server, so it's understandable that I can just dump off a shot against him and manage a bunch of hits like right there. That makes sense, but obviously against a carrier, you know, you may run into one a few times in an entire day. I mean, it just depends. But yeah, it's just, you have to remember that the high tier carriers and a few of the mid tier ones are really fast. So now we're going to switch over to see the potential of this ship. And wait a second, maybe not, maybe not. Look at this. Holy shit. He almost had his match end right there, and those torps become really important as this match goes on, because J-Dog Mastiff here that we're watching his replay, he unloads a can of whoop ass on this team. So he starts to engage an enemy Omaha here, gets a good salvo in with HE, switches over to AP as the guy starts to turn back to his starboard side, and this seems to be pretty much the sweet spot, you know, right at 10 to 11 kilometers. See what I mean? Like, the dispersion seems really good, nice and tight, seems to come down the way you really want to, and suddenly a wild Karlsruhe appears, and you know what we do with those guys, right? I mean, look at this. Perfect. Yeah, double devastating strikes. That's fantastic. And to me, what the really hard part about this ship is the fact that when you're looking at the HE performance, like, against battleships, you don't really have the rate of fire to sustain a lot of damage over a short period of time, and that's really where most cruisers shine against battleships, is just unloading HE salvo after HE salvo and, you know, getting them on fire. And I mean, this does have an excellent fire chance when you get Demolition Expert, but you know, it seems to me that if you've got the side of an enemy battleship, you should just stick with AP. You know, it seems to do better on an average than the HE, and it's kind of a, I feel odd even saying that, but you know, whatever the case is, the rate of fire is just too low to keep a sustained amount of pressure on enemy battleships, so you might as well go for the hard damage with AP. Now, he does get some good hits against that Minakaze here with HE, and you know, this is one of those areas that I wouldn't really recommend a Furutaka to be, you know, engaging at pretty close range an enemy destroyer, but at the very least it's the Minakaze, so in that respect you aren't at quite the same risk against a Minakaze and its guns as you are against, say, a Nicholas, which you've seen, you know, in my destroyer videos at this point. He does the right thing here with the HE, and you're going to see some good damage against the Bogue, and the Minakaze has his engines out. He does get a couple torp hits against the battleship that he fired at earlier before he started engaging the Minakaze here, and this poor guy has his guns knocked out. And I've seen a few close quarters expert medals come up from the Furutaka lately, and it's really funny to see that. But he uses the length of the ship to be able to get those shots around the island and take out the Minakaze, and now he's squared up against the enemy battleship here, and he dumps the torps in the water, and the guy knows they're coming now, so he's going to try to make a turn, but unfortunately it's just a bit too sluggish and a bit too late. So you can see his guns, you can like almost look at them watching those torps come in. He knows he's doomed, but really good damage on these torps. And again, remember, the upgraded torps have was like 16,400 max damage, so when they hit the torpedo bulges of an enemy battleship, they're still going to do pretty good amount. And that applies to even higher tier battleships such as the New Mexico and the Colorado. The Fuso does not really have all that much in the way of a torp bulge, or at least it never seems that way when I play it. When I get hit, it always seems to do just a shitload of damage. But he does have the torps going out against the other battleship, and he's doing the right thing here, where he's cradling up against the island and switching his attention back to the Bogue. see if he can finish him off while he has those torps going in against the battleship. And he still has a HE loaded. And see the shells hit right there, and the torps do the same. 25,000 damage. Ouch. With just 2 hits. That's pretty damn good. So he gets another salvo off against the Bogue, and he's capping at the same time while he's still trying to manage a torpedo run on the enemy battleship. So this is really good multitasking. It is poor play by this battleship, of course. I mean, there are a number of ways he could play this, but regardless, the result for J-Dog here is excellent, and you know, he's racking up medal after medal. I mean, he has 3 devastating strikes, so that's pretty damn impressive in a Furutaka of all things. But now he's finally cap C, and those torps are still on their way, and they only go 59 knots when they're upgraded. So I mean, I probably wouldn't recommend the torpedo acceleration, because I mean, 8 kilometers is still really useful, but again, I mean, 64 knots, it's just, I don't know, I really don't think that's enough of a difference. Gets a nice salvo of HE in there, starts a couple fires as well, and of course, that's always the big secret to damage for the Japanese cruisers, is so long as you can get those fires on targets, I mean, you're pretty much good to go. And seals the deal with the torpedo. Yay! So look at this, 6 kills, 8 torpedo hits, which is insane. I mean, that's actually pretty phenomenal. 3,700 base XP. So it was the first win of the day, and I'm sure he had something else going on there too, probably premium. And so he had 7,400 XP total. I mean, 190,000+ damage in this ship. Holy shit. So hats off to you, J-Dog. Very well done. And just before we close this out in the Furutaka, Kami will be having a stream April 3rd, so this Sunday, starting, my guess is, his usual time at 3 p.m. Eastern, and you just have to be a follower and on the NA server, of course. But yeah, feel free to swing by for that. I'll probably be playing a few games that day too. But the Furutaka is an interesting ship. I think that much is obvious. Whether or not it's a good ship is entirely your opinion. It can go either way. There's situations where it does very well in, others where it fails miserably. The range, I would say, needs to be buffed to 13.7, 13.8, and I think this would be a perfectly reasonable option at tier 5, especially with the addition of the Akirov with the 16.5 kilometer range. It just needs a little something extra right now. But anyways, hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you here next time, guys. Take care.